Hello! This is a video for the ACE Interactive ebook. Specifically, this one is going to be focused on how to develop a unit cover page. For this unit, I'm going to be working on a unit on the French Revolution for a high school world history course, but the basic principles should apply for any course at the middle or high school level. Now, just getting started on your unit, the first thing you should already have completed is your course cover page, which is going to give you a little bit of your framework going in. At that point, you should already have a unit goal and a unit assessment in mind. This is absolutely a chance to reevaluate that, but it's at least a starting place that fits in with the course narrative that you set up at the start of a year. The other thing that you should have is a list of the topics that you want to make sure to cover during your unit. So for this unit on revolutions between 1789 and 1825, I've made a list of some of the things that I want to cover. Up top, you can see I've got a lot of detail on the French Revolution, where I'm a little bit vaguer on the Haitian Revolution and the Latin American revolutions. Now, right away, I'm going to be thinking about ways to maybe cut back on this. It's a little heavy on the French Revolution at this point. So one thing that I'm thinking about doing is maybe taking this section on the directory, which is a section that I could probably do without. And so I'm going to decide, you know what, I'm probably not going to focus on that during this unit. And I think I'm going to fold the Congress of Vienna in with Napoleon, because that's very much as a reaction to Napoleon and sort of the end of that piece of the unit. And that should give me time to make my unit a little bit more focused. Once you know what your unit is about, you really want to make sure you're focusing in on the unit goal and the unit assessment. Everything you do should be building towards those two things. For me here, the unit goal is students will be able to evaluate the extent to which the French, Latin American, and Haitian revolutions succeeded or failed to embody Enlightenment ideals. My unit assessment is students will participate in a debate over whether the revolutions from 1789 to 1825 successfully embodied Enlightenment ideals. So that means that over the course of this unit, we need to be focusing on skills that are going to build up to evaluation tied to the Enlightenment, and skills that are going to tie into a debate as well. A really valuable thing in unit planning is to start at the end and then work backwards. So right here at the beginning of planning my unit, I'm going to plug in my performance assessment. That's the debate, when students are going to be debating whether the revolutions successfully embodied Enlightenment ideals. So now as I fill in my E&R and A&I lesson plans, I'm going to be thinking, all right, is this building up to that debate? Is this helping my students to evaluate whether or not Enlightenment ideals are being successfully implemented? Before you start filling in actual lesson plans, you want to decide what you're going to focus on for your A&I lesson plans versus your E&R lesson plans. So for this unit, I've decided that I'll put my teacher tests right here, so that the French Revolution is going to make up my A&I lesson plans, and the Haitian and Latin American revolutions are going to be my extending and refining. That's so that we can focus in on one revolution and evaluate it in depth in the first part of the unit. But there's also a historical reason for this. The Haitian and Latin American revolutions are inspired by the French Revolution, so it makes sense to build out from there. Now, once I'm going, I want to focus first on those E&R lesson plans. Again, I want to build my unit backwards. So I should be starting at that final verb, that verb of evaluate, so that when we go into the performance assessment, students are already at that level. You need to get to that verb, you need to get to that level in Bloom before you get to the performance assessment. Ideally, the lesson before, or maybe even 2 lessons before, if it's something that's going to take a little bit more preparation. So in this case, I've got to make sure that my lesson before the performance assessment is at the evaluate level. So I've got SWEBOT evaluate whether the Latin American revolutions were successful representation of Enlightenment ideals. And then for my assessment, I've got students will write an editorial that says what a country we studied would need to do to have an enlightened revolution. So on this assessment, students are going to be pulling in information from the Enlightenment, pulling in information from a revolution of their choice, and saying whether they were successful and what they would need to do in order to be successful. So we've got that evaluate element there as well. When you're thinking about where the test goes in your unit, you usually only want 4, 5 at the most A&I lesson plans. That's because your test should be based on that core of your unit, that acquiring and integrating, to make sure that you've got a benchmark, and then you can build on that. You can build up to that higher verb. You can build up to the performance assessment in the ENR lesson plans. You shouldn't have too much going on before you get to the test. I think that a good rule of thumb is to make sure you're always at analysis by the test. So for here, we've got the lesson before the test, Sweebot investigate the extent to which Napoleon fulfilled and betrayed the goals of the Enlightenment and the Revolution. So here we're tying Napoleon specifically into the unit goal. So that's what, as you're making your lesson objectives, you want to make sure that they clearly feed into your unit goal. So they shouldn't be just Sweebot investigate the legacy of Napoleon. You want to have something that ties in with that unit goal and really builds up to that idea. As far as the lesson assessments go, you want to make sure that they are tools that you can use to assess students' progress towards the unit goal, and also that they're tools that can help students prepare for the unit assessment. So for example, here I'm asking my students to create a point counterpoint for Napoleon as a son of the revolution, someone who's fulfilling its ideals, and as a betrayer of the revolution, someone who is going against them. So that way I'm getting to see how they can evaluate the successes and failures of the French Revolution, tying in with that unit goal, but it's also preparing them for the debate that they're going to be having as their performance assessment. So it's serving as both of those pieces. In the same way, in the lesson before this, students are going to be examining arguments for and against the Reign of Terror. So it's very similar to this lesson about Napoleon, but since we're looking for this evaluation goal, we want to make sure that we have a really strong groundwork, and also that's going to help to be good preparation for our debate at the end of the unit. One important piece in your unit is to make sure that you have a diversity of assessments. This is good because it allows you to see in different ways how your students are progressing towards the unit goal. It also helps to keep things more interesting for your students if they're not taking a quiz at the end of every lesson, and it's going to allow different students to play to their strengths. So if you have artistic students, they're going to have a leg up on designing a poster versus a student who really enjoys making arguments and writing, who's going to succeed with the silent debate. So for example, in LP2, a little early in the unit, I'm going to have my students create a poster for one faction in the French Revolution that shows their goals and the Enlightenment inspiration for that faction. This is a little bit of a simpler assessment, but early in the unit, it's going to provide me with a simple check of how my students are doing. That way, before we get into the more challenging assessments, I'm going to already know which students need a bit of a leg up, which concepts need some review, just from a simple check like that. You want to make sure that you're not spending a lot of time on those low-level verbs. So at the introduction to my unit, I've got Sweebot describe the system of estates in pre-revolutionary France, but we're only going to spend 2 days on that, and then we're going to get out and we're going to start pushing for higher-level verbs, higher-level thinking. You want to make sure that you put in good groundwork early on, but that doesn't mean that you spend too much time at a low level, because that's when you're going to start to get in trouble with having too many of these lessons, too much content before you get to the teacher test. Lastly, you always want to make sure that you're planning in conjunction with whatever standards your diocese is asking you to follow. In my case, I'm using the Diocese of St. Petersburg Power Standards. And in this case, this whole unit is going to be based around standard number 5, which says causes, events, and effects of the Enlightenment and impact on the French and other revolutions. So that means that I am going to be plugging 5 into each of these boxes, which is useful both for me and for any other people that I submit my unit to, so they can look and they can see what it is that's leading me to use this structure of the French Revolution as well as the Haitian and Latin American. Once you're done, you want to scroll up to the top here, take a look at your course page estimated duration and your unit cover page duration. Here it's lined up neatly. We got 15 days on each of them. If that is different, you're going to want to look at this in conjunction with your course cover page, see why they don't line up, and you've got to make a decision then as to whether you need to change the days of one of the lessons here, or if you need to reassess your course cover page. In most cases, you want to stick to your course cover page. So you're going to want to look in here and see, maybe is there some fat here to trim? Maybe I need to cut this Napoleon lesson down to 2 days. All right, and that's how to plan a unit in the ACE template. It's really helpful. Remember, start at the end, work your way to the beginning. Make sure that you're always focused on that unit goal and that unit assessment to make sure your students are as prepared as they can be.